Hello everyone, welcome to Caroline Nutrition. This is episode 2, Arthritis, more than just inflammation. I'm your host Ian Cath, and I'm the one with the interest and questions to help us have the best that food has to give: health, vitality and enjoyment. And to help me make some sense of all the information that's out there, I'm joined with Caroline Scott, nutritionalist and dietitian, and the person with the answers to your questions. Hello Caroline, how are things today?
They're great, thanks Ian. How are you going?
Pretty good. It's wonderful to be back with episode 2, the continuation of the inflammation story, but we're heading down a different path because we're going to be talking about this thing called arthritis. Now, I actually don't know anybody with arthritis. I don't have anybody in my family with it. We've been pretty lucky actually. But do you know people with arthritis?
Oh, absolutely. You've got to get yourself out a bit more.
No, I'd rather hang out with healthy people. It's nice.
Well, I find arthritis is a very common condition, and today, here in Australia, it actually sends millions to their doctor's office every single year. Many of my clients suffer with arthritis, so it's a very common disorder, and I just thought it would be great to dive down that rabbit hole of inflammation, because arthritis has a very common base in that it's created right at the cellular level from inflammation, and it kind of carries on really naturally from what we were talking about last time.
Okay. Now, the little bit I know about arthritis is not much, but it seems to be there's not just one type. So can you fill us in a little bit? Like I know it means that people have got sore fingers and gammy knees and their hips hurt and stuff like that, but what does that really mean?
Yeah, okay. There are two kind of genres of arthritis that we bundle people into. So there's, and they're similar and different at the same time. So you have an osteoarthritis, which is your normal joint wear and tear kind of arthritis, and that's where you get the cranky knuckles and gammy knees and hips, as you say. But you also get the rheumatoid arthritis. Now that's more likely a genetic condition, but it's an autoimmune disorder.
Okay, so before we go any further, does that mean that you're born with the end of conversation, you're stuck with it, you can't do anything about lifestyle thing, rheumatoid arthritis?
No, not at all. But it does mean that you're more likely to get rheumatoid arthritis if you have the gene that presupposes or predisposes you to rheumatoid arthritis. But remembering epigenetics, that you won't actually get the rheumatoid arthritis unless you express that gene in some way. And that is actually an autoimmune disorder. And I was hoping, even though we can cover a little bit of it today, I was hoping we can actually park that one and save it for a later conversation where I really wanted to cover the autoimmune disorders so that we could get a better understanding of what they are and how to prevent them and how to reverse them, etc. My clients, I find, at least the guys I'm seeing, generally suffer the more common type, which is the osteoarthritis, rather than the genetic rheumatoid arthritis. So if that's cool with you, let's focus on the osteoarthritis today.
Okay, so osteoarthritis, it sounds and reminds me a little bit of osteoporosis.
As in the wording, you mean?
Yes,
so it's got at the base osteo coming from bones, and porosis obviously meaning more porous, thinning bones. And osteoarthritis is you're getting the inflammation in the bones. So itis on the end of a word is just simply denotes inflammation. So wherever you've got the inflammation in the body, the itis on the end tells you that it's an inflammatory condition.
So like appendicitis.
Yes, it's inflammation of the appendix. Right, yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Right. So, okay, let's find out a little bit about osteoarthritis. How does it happen? How do people go out and buy that and put it in their body?
Okay, if only it were that simple, you could avoid the shops. Osteoarthritis generally comes about with wear and tear on your joints. Now, most people would commonly think this occurs only in aging, and certainly it is seen in the medical world as an aging condition, but it doesn't have to be. It could be anything that is going to create wear and tear on a joint. So, for example, think about sports people that repetitively at a high level exercise and repeat their exercise. So, for example, a cyclist is always cycling, a swimmer who's always swimming. The actions are very, very repetitive, and over time that creates an awful lot of wear and tear on particular joints.
So cyclists, their knees, their hips, swimmers, their shoulders.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, these days we're understanding this better, and sports physiologists and sports scientists are beginning to help athletes in their training, so there's more cross-training, so they're not putting so much concern on or so much weight on one particular joint. But still, just the action itself and the training that these people put themselves in, commonly you see arthritis with older athletes. So it doesn't have to be an ageing condition. It can also be a condition of purely wear and tear, where you're overusing a joint in a particular way. And that's truly how you develop osteoarthritis. Of course, there is another way that you can incur osteoarthritis, or at least there's an association, and that is with low vitamin D levels. There's a fair bit of research that links these two things, and so it's always worth getting your vitamin D levels checked every so often to make sure that they're at optimum and not just okay, but that there are optimal levels, so that you can be sure that you don't have this added complication that potentially could lead to arthritis.
Okay, so an athlete is cycling, for argument's sake, and their knee is rubbing backwards and forwards. What's going on that actually causes the arthritis? You know, I can understand that maybe the cartilage wears out and things like that, but what's happening inside the joint that causes a problem that is arthritis? It
is exactly as you've flagged, really. It's about the reduction of cartilage. For some people, it can also be a build-up of acidic crystals in the joint. So it can come from the wear and tear of an exercise, so a repetitive motion, but it can also come if you've got particular foods regularly in your diet, and they have an endpoint, so they are creating a crystal. Let's pick on one that's easy to remember, uric acid. So if you have uric acid crystals built up in a joint, maybe an elbow joint or a knee joint or something, or in the case of, you've probably heard of this, gout.
My father's had gout from time to time.
Yeah, really, really uncomfortable if anyone's experienced gout.
Tends to happen in the lower limbs, doesn't it?
It tends to, but it doesn't have to, and it's not restricted. It can happen in any limb and any joint, but we will call it gout when it commonly happens in the lower limbs. But all that is a build-up of uric acid crystals, and we're getting those in the body, one, because you're eating foods that are creating these crystals, and two, because your body is not clearing them as fast as you're making them. So you're getting a build-up of these crystals in the joints. And because the body's not effective at getting rid of them, it dumps them, or they get caught up in the joint area, and they can cause this really painful. It's slightly different to the wear and tear that we see, where we see the breakdown of the cartilage. That's slightly different, but I tell you, the symptoms and the pain and the discomfort are exactly the same.
And that is where the inflammation starts to try to fix the problem by swelling the joints, and that inflammation is what we call arthritis.
Well, it's a bit of everything. So as soon as the body has some inflammation of some sort, it's going to inflame the joint capsule to try and heal it and to try and repair it. And that again can cause its own problem, because now you've got inflammation and heat and swelling in an area where you don't want it and don't need it. So if you're constantly creating that in your body with the foods that or some sort of toxin or chemical pollutant that you're exposing yourself to regularly, then you're going to really have trouble healing long term. The body needs some rest to be able to heal.
Okay, so we're talking about joint breakdowns, cartilage and things like that. We've mentioned about the build-up of some sort of toxins like uric acid in the case of gout. Okay, so you mentioned about vitamin D being important. What's going on there?
Well, the research just shows that maintaining optimal levels of vitamin D helps to reduce the amount, or the incidence, if you like, of arthritis.
Okay, so they don't know whether that's the inflammation side of it or the causes that cause the inflammation.
That's right. I'm not entirely sure whether they're clear on that, whether it's the vitamin D is helping to reduce inflammation or prevent inflammation, but they just know that the presence of vitamin D reduces the incidence.
Stay tuned, people. Medical research will reveal this answer in time.
Let's hope it won't be in 5 years.
The causes of it seems to be pretty cut and dry. It's basically wear and tear or muck getting into the joints and causing an inflammation reaction, and that is what we call arthritis. Is that basically it? There's nothing else that sort of gets in there?
Well, no, that's basically it. But remembering at the base of arthritis is this inflammation. So it takes us back to the points we made in the last episode about inflammation itself. So without the wear and tear, the inflammation won't set in.
Okay, so you've got the wear and tear, or you've got the uric acid crystals in your joint. How do we fix these problems?
So, okay, it depends who you go to as to how you're going to fix them. Because if you go to your regular medico, they don't really have much of an answer for you except for using anti-inflammatories, because that's helping to treat the pain. And far be it for me to suggest that you wouldn't want to treat the pain, because the pain of arthritis or gout can be horrendous. So there are conditions and there are times when you want to deal with the pain. If you're in so much pain that you can't sleep, then your body can't heal naturally. So you need to deal with the pain. That being said, you want to be really careful how you manage these medications, because you can easily become addicted to over-the-counter anti-pain and anti-inflammatories. So we need to be careful with those. There are plenty of natural ways of reducing the pain and the inflammation, but also there are plenty of ways of preventing it. And for me, you know me, prevention is always key. So I want to go 2 steps back before we even consider that we have an inflammatory condition and look at how we can prevent the condition starting.
Okay, so how can we prevent it even getting underway? But preventing even the inflammation from happening, because the causes of the inflammation are never present. How do we do that?
Okay, so the best way to actually look at preventing inflammation is coming through the diet and ensuring that you've always got the elements in the diet that are naturally anti-inflammatory. And we covered this last time, but we can cover it again because I think it's important, particularly if you didn't listen to episode 1. What were you thinking? Get back there and listen to episode 1. It's just above episode 2. So your major anti-inflammatories are your omega-3 fats and oils, and they come in natural foods, and most people will have heard about omega-3 by now. They come in our natural foods in the form of oily fish, whether that's your sardines or your salmon or your mackerel, anchovies, herring, if you come from the northern hemisphere, eels, yummy, or maybe not. Other omega-3 fats that are really important come in our nuts and seeds, so things like chia seeds, hemp seeds, pumpkin seeds. You've also got astaxanthin. Can't believe I managed to pronounce that. That's a type of algae, and it's really high and rich in omega-3. So if you're someone who doesn't want to take fish oil capsules, for example, you could look for some of these algae-based capsules. Flaxseed oil is another beautiful way to increase your omega-3 in your diet. Get a really good brand and a really good source of flaxseed oil, or just use flax seeds in your diet. But you need to crush the flax seeds or they're going to go in and come out in exactly the same format. So other foods that you can include in your diet, and include these foods on a regular basis, not just once a week or once a month when you remember, but pretty regularly. So you want them more than 3 times a week. Eggs. Eggs are a great way to get some anti-inflammatory properties into your diet. Ginger, good old ginger. However you want to, whether you want to grate it into your veggie juice or into your salad or in with your veggies at night, however you want to do that. Bromelain, which is found in pineapples. So pineapples are, now please folks, let's remember, we're not talking about pineapples that come out of a can. We are talking about real food here. So you want to buy pineapples from your local greengrocer and make sure they're nice and ripe. And when they are nice and ripe, they're full of an enzyme called bromelain, which is a natural anti-inflammatory. So sure, you can take it in supplement form, but eating fresh pineapple, particularly when it's in season, is a great way to get it. And then there are other oils like evening primrose oil, blackcurrant oil, borage oil. Now, you can't really go down the garden or down your local greengrocer and find these, so these are best taken in supplement form. And there are some really good supplements out there, and people sometimes want me to name and shame and actually give you an idea of supplements, and I don't always like to do that. But in this case, there is one on the market which I think is pretty damn brilliant, and it's been really well researched, and it's called Udo's formula. Now, you can either buy that from your health food store as an oil or as capsules. And what this guy has done that formulates this formula for us, this oil, is they've included all of the essential fats and oils. So it contains your evening primrose, your black currant, your borage oil, flaxseed, and a little bit of DHA in the form of algae. So it's a great all-round supplement, which you can add a spoonful to yourself, your partner, your dog, your child, to their smoothie, or just into the soup just before you drink it, whatever it is, but get it into you every single day. That would be it's a natural anti-inflammatory, and it gives us all of our essential fatty acids. The very last one I really want to mention is curcumin. And curcumin is the natural constituent that comes in turmeric, which is a spice that we all know and love. You know, it's that one that if you grate too much of it, you look like a smoker because you end up with orange fingers. So there are countries around the world that have commonly eaten turmeric on a daily basis, and they don't have anywhere near the levels of inflammation and inflammatory disorders that we here in the West suffer from. It's very interesting. The research on curcumin right now as an anti-inflammatory is huge. So we know that this works beautifully. Now, you can either buy that as a supplement, and if you have an arthritic condition, I would buy it as a supplement because you need hardcore anti-inflammatories, and just grating a little bit of turmeric into your diet every day is not going to cut it. But as a preventative, using turmeric in your diet on a daily basis is a great way to go. And I think I have a sneaky suspicion that we're going to do a recipe later with some turmeric in it.
Maybe. We'll see how things go. So all of these ingredients that you just mentioned, which, by the way, are all over on the site at carolinenutrition.com, episode 2, we'll have that full list for you to go and have a look at and explore. All of those are both preventative and treatments for inflammation, are they?
Yes, they're preventative because they are naturally anti-inflammatory. And if you have a condition, they are anti-inflammatory.
So if you're heading down the path of developing arthritis, this is going to help make sure it doesn't develop. And if you've already got it, it's going to help fix the problem.
It's going to help reduce particularly the pain and the inflammation, which, remember, is the underlying cause. And it's the underlying, if you like, it's the fire that's creating and keeping the arthritis going. So if you take the fire or put the fire out, over time, the body heals.
So I was just about to ask about that, because underneath the inflammation is the actual injury, the harm, whether it be the toxins or whether it be the lack of cartilage, there's the actual harm. So you have to remove the inflammation to let the cartilage regrow, or to remove the crystals. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, definitely. The body itself is a fabulous natural healer, and the longer we allow it to do its own thing without all the added extras, the better you'll heal. But there are also some other things that you can add in to aid and to speed up the healing. And there's things like glucosamine. Now, some people will have tried glucosamine, and the research on it is varied. So it can work beautifully for some people. It's useless for others.
Okay, it's really popular. I've seen this on television advertised, particularly for over 55-year-olds. And the like, people who are getting on in years, they're sort of necking this stuff constantly. That's the sort of product you're talking about? I am,
and it's the result. The sad thing is the results from the studies that evaluate supplements like this have been really mixed. So many don't appear to be getting a significant relief from using glucosamine. However, some more recent research has indicated that if you boost the benefits of glucosamine by combining it with omega-3 fats and oils, you actually get a much more significant result. So by putting your glucosamine with your fish oil, or by increasing the fish in your diet, it's going to make the glucosamine more effective.
Makes sense. You get more bang for your buck.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Whether it makes sense or not, I don't know. But that's what the recent research is showing, which is brilliant.
Yeah, it makes sense to actually combine them if it's going to have some effect like that.
Yeah. Look, I always think as well that nutritional supplements, if you're taking them, you need to make sure they're going to work together in harmony and not things that are going to cancel each other out. So you do have to have a bit of an understanding before you go hoeing into supplements. And that's why I like the Udo's formula, because it's got so many of those oils in there together. You don't have to take several capsules. A spoonful of that oil gives you all of your basic essential fatty acids for the day. I think that's brilliant. Include a couple of eggs 2 or 3 times a week, and you're done and dusted. It really is just that simple. The other thing to remember, though, and like all these things, we need to add all these good stuff into our diet, but there are still things that come in on a daily basis that, again, are creating the fire. And we need to really identify those and make sure that we reduce, eliminate, avoid those foods. And those foods are... Can I go ahead with those foods?
Yeah, tell me what.
Okay, so we really want to focus on eliminating refined and processed sugars and most grains. If you are suffering from an arthritic condition or from gout, please remove grains from your diet for a period of time so that we can give the body time to heal. It's not forever, but just so that we give the body that little space where it can actually heal without having that insult on a constant level. You're looking really befuddled now.
No, I'm just wondering. I had an experience many years ago, Caroline. I ran a couple of marathons back in my mid-20s. And because of that, I was eating huge amounts of carbohydrates, pasta and wheat and based floury, bready things, just huge amounts. I was running 100-odd kilometres a week. And that lifestyle continued into my 30s and 40s. And I eventually had to stop that in my mid-40s. It was just too much. But I noticed a few times that if I woke up in the morning and I had, say, Wheat Bix for breakfast, and then I had 6 slices of bread for lunch, and then I had pasta at night time, there wasn't a problem the first day. But the second day, I noticed I started getting a little bit of joint pain in my knees. That's where I first started noticing it. And if I continued by about day 3 or 4, I was starting to really hurt. Now, I wondered if that might have been the early onset of arthritis. But I found that it took me a couple of years to see the pattern. But what I did is I stopped eating so much wheat and the problem went away. Is this the sort of build-up in the joint?
Oh, definitely. Wow. I mean, I think that's great that you were able to identify it, because most people won't identify physical symptoms in their body with what they're actually eating. So they don't tend to link those things. So I think it's brilliant that you did, and that you made a change and therefore got a resolution.
Well, it started pretty simply. I'd had this pain, and then I noticed one day that I hadn't had any wheat-based products for a day or so, and the pain had gone away. And eventually, once that happened enough times and I saw the pattern, I started going, oh, hello, that pain's back. Oh, yeah, goodness, I've had 2 days of wheat every meal.
Yeah. Sometimes it is just about the accumulation of those foods. So it doesn't mean that just because you eat Wheat Bix you're going to get inflammation or arthritis, but sometimes it's the heavy load. So in our diet, when we're eating wheat-based products, grain-based products 3 times a day, sometimes 5 times a day, then yes, there's going to be an outcome, and that generally is inflammatory. And of course, remembering also sugar, refined and processed sugar, is a very inflammatory substance anyway. So if that's in your diet on a daily basis, that's going to drive an inflammatory condition for sure. And
will sugar do the same thing in your joints, like an arthritis type reaction? Like grains can? Oh,
definitely, because it's inflammatory. So again, it does depend. I mean, the sugar doesn't go into your body and go, right, let's go to the joints and make them really crackly and nasty.
Which I did find the wheat did.
Yes, so the grains directly do. Sugar just inflames the body. So if you already have inflammation in a joint, the sugar will just join the party. So it won't create a new inflammatory party somewhere. It will join the one that's already going on.
I'd be interested to know if there's anybody out there who maybe has had that sort of experience where sugar has inflamed them and they've removed sugar and it's got better, and then they've put it back and it's got worse, and they've seen that pattern happening. Because like I said, I noticed it with wheat in my joints, but I've never eaten enough sugar, I think, to have that reaction in my own diet.
Do you know, I had a client years ago when I was down in Newcastle, and this gentleman came in to see me, and he was quite embarrassed. He was a very fit, intelligent guy. He thought he had his health under control, and he had gout. And it was really uncomfortable for him. So we went through his diet, and he didn't seem like the standard kind of guy that would, or the usual client that might develop gout. So we went through his diet and we really analysed what he was doing. And what we researched and what we worked out was that in his beautiful garden, he had orange trees. And this was the season for oranges. And so he was eating, I mean, folks, let's remember, eating 1 orange a day, that's lovely. But he wasn't. He was juicing at least 10. And he was drinking that as really concentrated orange juice. And he had this habit and this love for strong black tea. And because he just retired from his job as a very, very busy person, he was drinking more tea than usual, and it was strong and black. So the tannins in that tea, the acid in the oranges, just because it was overwhelming his body and he was doing it every single day for a couple of weeks, gave him a uric acid buildup, which gave him the gout symptoms. We took those two things out of his diet, and within 3 days, all the pain had gone and it never came back.
Goodness.
Sometimes it really can just be simple. We're overdoing it for some reason, and we've forgotten to remember that, yes, it's plum season or cherry season, and we've eaten a bucket load instead of just a small handful.
Yeah, and everybody says, oranges are good for you. So, 2 oranges is good a day. So 20's got to be 10 times better.
Well, it's true. That's what people think, which is crazy. I mean, can you imagine how long it takes to eat 20 oranges? But the problem today is that we often tend to juice these things. And so we're getting all the concentrates, particularly of the sugars. We're leaving all the fibre behind, which might help to slow down the release of the sugars. And now you have a really concentrated form of a food, which was never supposed to be in our body in that form. So it's not that there's anything wrong with oranges, but I wouldn't be drinking a gallon of orange juice every single day, whether you juiced it fresh from your tree or whether you've bought it from the supermarket. It's just not a great practice.
So I suppose, to sum up, if we go hard and wear our bodies out and don't give it enough rest, we could be paying a price, which could turn into arthritis. And if we're taking in the wrong types of ingredients into our body, that can also create problems in our joints and cause arthritis. And in both cases, we need to wind back the inflammation to give our body time to heal from either cause. And how else would you wrap this up?
Well, I would just say, as we said previously in the last episode, really focus on eating real food. So eating food that is as close to its form in nature, is as raw as possible. I don't mean you have to eat all your food raw. You can cook it, but it needs to be raw as in unprocessed and unrefined. If your diet is 85% natural whole foods, you're not going to end up with these problems.
Pretty simple. Well, that's a surprisingly simple fix for this condition. But continuing on from the theme of inflammation, what are we going to be talking about next time, Caroline?
Well, what I really thought I'd love to cover is a pretty big topic, so hopefully we won't have to split it in two, but I'd really like to talk about diabetes, and in particular diabetes type 2, because that afflicts so many of us.
Okay, well, I know very, very little about this topic, so I'll be interested to hear what you have to say. And,
really? You don't know anyone with diabetes?
No, I don't know anybody.
Wow.
And I actually don't know much about it. I know a little bit about insulin and needles and stuff, but not much else. So, and I know a lot of people supposedly have this out there, but I really don't know anything about it.
Okay, well, cool.
So you'll have to educate me.
Okay, we can do that.
Okay, excellent. And we'd also love to hear about your personal arthritis experience and what you found has worked. Let us know. Contact us and send us an email maybe and tell us your stories. It's always good to hear from you. There are plenty of ways of contacting us. One of the best, of course, is email, which is contact@carolinenutrition.com. You can also subscribe in iTunes or on your favourite podcatching app. Caroline's Twitter handle is @CJRScott, whereas mine is @IanCath. There's also a Facebook and a SoundCloud page which you can find. All of these links are available on the site at carolinenutrition.com. Drop on over. We'd love to hear from you.
Are we going to do a recipe?
Yeah? Have you got something?
Well, I was thinking
What were you thinking? Come on.
I was thinking about my healthy immune turmeric tonic.
Turmeric.
It's a bit of a mouthful, I know.
Well, so this is like a curry, I take it?
No.
Well, they use turmeric in Indian food.
Well, they do. They use turmeric in a lot of foods. But turmeric is brilliant for reducing inflammation. In fact, the research trials that are out there right now on turmeric are just incredible. So what I am going to suggest is that we make ourselves a beautiful little healing drink made out of totally natural foods. So are you happy for me to go?
Yeah, sure. Fire away.
Okay. So you get your saucepan on the stove, put in a cup of water, 2 cups, however many people are drinking this stuff, or you can make a whole batch and drink it through the day. And in the winter, you drink it hot, That's my preference. In the summer, you can chill it right down and have it as a nice, refreshing, cooling drink. But you want to add grated ginger. Fresh ginger's best. If you really can't get fresh, then go for powder, but I think fresh is better. Grated ginger. Add some grated turmeric. Then add a little nub of honey, not too much, teaspoon perhaps, just enough to make it palatable. Some lemon juice, a whole juice of a whole lemon if you like. Again, you've got to make it palatable for yourself, so whatever to taste. And then just very gently bring it to a simmer. Oh, another thing that you can add, some people, you might like this because you like your spices, a little bit of black pepper would be beautiful. Just don't overpower it. So just adding enough to make it palatable for everything. Bring it up for a simmer, let it simmer for a good 5-10 minutes, let all the spices and flavours combine. Taste it as you go if you like. And then that's it. It's simple as. And just stick that in a flask and drink it through the day. It's a beautiful healing tonic.
Okay, and what does it do? What's so good about it?
It's anti-inflammatory. So we've spoken before about, the turmeric and the ginger, and black pepper helps the turmeric absorb a little bit better. So it's just an anti-inflammatory tonic. It's brilliant.
And it tastes okay. It sounds like it tastes a bit like an Asian food store.
No, you add enough nice raw honey to it. Not too much though. You don't want to make it a sugar bomb, but just put a little spoonful of honey. It's beautiful. Especially in the chill of winter, it's a lovely thing to sip on.
Okay. It sounds all right. I'll stick with what I do. Do you know what I do?
What are you talking about? What do you do?
Well, when I go to work, my morning tea, my morning smoko is I have a handful.
You're boasting about your veggie sticks again.
Well, I just have a handful of celery and a cucumber and maybe a few bits of fruit. And what I used to do years and years ago when I was an apprentice, I used to actually pour salt on the celery and eat that, but I was eating way too much salt doing that. And when I started doing this again a few years back, I also was using salt, but it was too much. So I started adding a bit of cumin to it. And now, as well as the cumin, I have a bit of turmeric in it. And as it turns out, just coincidentally, I've always had salt and pepper in it also. And I use that as a dip for my celery and cucumber. And it's what I have for morning tea. It's just a bit of a snack, a bit of seasoning for those vegetables because they're a bit bland. And lo and behold, it turns out I've been eating turmeric and didn't even realise it. With the pepper, go figure. Just happened to be eating it the way people have told me lately is the best way to eat it.
I told you that.
Oh, well, that was you, was it? Sorry, I forgot. I thought I picked it up in my own efforts out there reading stuff.
Don't you love it?
Yeah. Okay, folks, that's it for another episode of Caroline Nutrition. That was episode 2, all about arthritis. So come back next time for episode 3, which is going to be all about
Diabetes.
See you then, everybody. Bye-bye for now.
Bye.